He was something to.
Street decisions. Let me know when we got to get him on there, guys. Yep. Man, we're gonna have to get him on this cot, okay? I know you. I know. Well, let me get in there, man. Okay. Let us get in there, hon. Okay. Let us get in there.
On New Year's Eve of 2018, the small town in Michigan was quiet, with only a few warm lights glowing from nearby homes. Tyrone Hassel III, a young soldier home on leave, had returned to his father's house to spend the holiday with his family. Earlier that evening, Tyrone had stopped by a relative's home and brought back food for his wife, Kamaya, and their one-year-old son. Everything seemed peaceful and ordinary, and no one could have imagined that the next few minutes would become a turning point in all their lives. Tyrone stepped back outside, planning to return to his truck. But the moment he walked down the driveway, a series of gunshots shattered the stillness of the winter night. Neighbors later said they only heard a few sharp bursts, then silence. Kamaya, his young wife, rushed to the door.
He was something to.
She told police she heard the gunfire, opened the door, and saw Tyrone collapsed on the ground beside his truck. In a panic, she dialed 911, her voice breaking as she reported that her husband had been shot multiple times. Emergency units arrived within minutes. A shooting on New Year's Eve, at a time when no one expected danger, left the entire community stunned. And no one knew that this was only the beginning of a tangled mystery that would unfold in the hours to come.
We got 4. Make sure. I need to make sure you don't have a gun on him, too. Okay.
All right,
hey, guys.
we need to secure this.
Yeah. Hey, bud. I know this is messed up. We got to get you guys out of here so we can secure this scene, okay? We got to collect some evidence and find out what the hell's going on here, okay?
Come on here with us.
Come on out here with us. I know, man. We got it, but we got to get you out here a second, okay? We'll talk to you in a minute. Do you live here, bud?
I live here.
Okay. What's your name?
My grandson is probably in there by himself.
As the rapid response team reached the scene, Tyrone was still barely alive. His breathing was so faint it was almost impossible to hear, and blood had soaked into the thin layer of snow along the driveway. The wounds stretched from his head and face down to his neck and shoulder, forcing paramedics to fight for every second as they tried to stop the bleeding. One officer checked his pulse and simply shook his head. Tyrone was in extremely critical condition. Police immediately locked down the entire area around the house. Red and blue lights flashed across nearby windows, waking neighbors who had been fast asleep. No one dared step outside. They only cracked their doors open and peered down the street where the tragedy had just unfolded. Another officer quickly carried Tyrone's one-year-old son out of the house. The child, still half asleep, had no idea what was happening. He cried at the loud noises and unfamiliar faces. Officers temporarily handed him to a relative to prevent the situation from affecting him further. Meanwhile, Kamaya, Tyrone's wife, stood beside the ambulance, shaking and crying uncontrollably. She tried to climb inside to go with her husband, gripping the door frame as if it were the only thing holding her together. Medical staff had to calm her multiple times, urging her to step back so they could work, but she refused to leave the vehicle's side. According to officers on the scene, she appeared completely overwhelmed, repeatedly saying she didn't understand what happened and that she only heard sudden gunfire. Once the ambulance pulled away, investigators turned their attention to the driveway where Tyrone had collapsed. Flashlights swept across the snow-covered ground. Shell casings were scattered in a curved pattern, suggesting the shooter had stood close and fired multiple rounds in rapid succession. Any unusual footprints were already disturbed during the rescue efforts, but the number of casings made one thing clear. This wasn't self-defense, and it wasn't random firing. Then came another crucial detail. All of Tyrone's personal belongings were untouched. Lying beside the blood stain was his phone. His wallet hadn't been taken. His keys were still in the truck's ignition. One officer shook his head. Not a robbery. Another added, and not mistaken identity either. Whoever did this was close and aimed straight at his head and face. The lead investigator noted that there were no signs of a struggle, no indication the place had been searched, and the shots were delivered in an execution-style manner, not during a sudden confrontation. Within minutes, two of the most common theories in shooting cases, robbery and mistaken target, were almost entirely ruled out. As officers continued collecting evidence, a troubling question began forming in everyone's mind. Why would a young soldier with no known enemies be ambushed right outside his own home? New Year's Eve is supposed to be a night of reunion and celebration, but in Michigan that year, it marked the beginning of a dark and unsettling mystery. And this was only the start.
I gotta get my son.
Okay,
Where's in the house?
how old's your son?
He's one. I gotta get.
Okay, where in the house is he?
He's at the door.
Okay. All right. Do you have any idea what happened here?
No, he just brought us something to eat.
Okay.
I was sitting on the couch eating, and then I just heard gunshots.
Okay.
And I ran to put my son in the room, and I came outside, and he was laying on the cart.
Okay. How many gunshots did you hear?
I don't know. I just heard a lot.
Okay.
I need to get my son. He's in the house.
Okay, we're gonna let you do that, but we gotta sort this out here first, okay?
Okay,
Is he the only one in the house right now?
Yes, he's by himself.
All right. What's your name?
My name is Kamaya.
How do you spell it?
K-E-M-I-A.
As soon as the ambulance pulled away from the scene, another investigative team started retracing Tyrone's steps leading up to the shooting. Every action he took that day could hold the key to identifying the shooter. And the first clue surfaced pretty quickly. Just a few hours earlier, Tyrone had stopped by a nearby Walmart to buy a box of 9mm ammunition. That immediately raised a question. Why would a young soldier home on leave need to buy more ammo? Was he planning to practice at the range or simply stocking up on personal gear? Investigators checked the receipt, confirmed the timestamp, and reviewed the store's surveillance footage. Nothing looked unusual. Tyrone walked in, bought the ammo, paid, and left. Everything appeared completely normal. However, an exterior camera captured a more interesting detail. After leaving Walmart, Tyrone stopped to talk with two acquaintances. Their identities were confirmed quickly. Both were former military colleagues who happened to run into him in the parking lot. Police brought them in for interviews, but both had solid alibis at the time of the shooting. They also had no reason to harm Tyrone. Their previous relationship with him was described as positive. That possibility was eliminated. Checking Tyrone's communication history didn't help either. No threatening calls, no strange messages, and no signs that he had been followed or targeted beforehand. His phone was still at the scene, untouched. No one tried to take it or destroy it. At the same time, investigators gathered statements from family members. Everyone said the same thing. Tyrone had no enemies. He was calm, disciplined, and stayed far away from trouble. A model soldier, a responsible husband, and a devoted father. Even neighbors said they had never seen him in any kind of serious conflict with anyone in the area. Yet the attack itself told a different story. A close-range shooting. Multiple rounds aimed at the head and face. This wasn't random. It wasn't a spur-of-the-moment fight. Whether they wanted to or not, detectives had to explore all possibilities. First theory, robbery. But the scene completely contradicted that. Tyrone's belongings were untouched. No signs of a struggle, no rifling through his pockets. The shooter didn't take his phone, wallet, or keys. Robbery? Not likely. Second theory, mistaken identity. A misidentification might happen at night, but the way the shooter approached said otherwise. He got close, fired multiple precise shots, and left immediately. If he had mistaken Tyrone for someone else, being that close would have revealed the error. But there was no indication this was an accident. The shooter seemed to know exactly who he was aiming at. Third theory, personal revenge. But revenge for what? Tyrone had no debts, no involvement with anything shady, and no record of conflicts with anyone in town. Family and fellow soldiers confirmed he hadn't been having issues in the military either. No one had a motive strong enough to stalk and ambush him like that. One investigator wrote in his notes, "A hit carried out this way requires a strong motive, but our victim doesn't have enemies. That doesn't add up." Police began canvassing nearby homes, searching for any security cameras, but most houses either didn't have cameras or had them pointed only at their own driveways. Nothing captured the shooter's approach or escape. Time passed, and each theory collapsed one by one. No physical evidence, no eyewitnesses, no clear motive. The case was turning into a paradox, a near-perfect ambush with no trace left behind. And beneath that silence, something felt off. An unspoken detail, a strange intuition nagging at the detectives. How did the shooter know the exact moment Tyrone would step outside? No one knew then that the answer was much closer than they imagined, hidden inside the very house the police were trying to protect. In the midst of the investigation hitting a dead end, a phone call from a neighbor opened up a completely new direction. Someone living directly across from Tyrone's father's house reported seeing a suspicious vehicle shortly before the shooting. This immediately caught investigators' attention, since it was the first clue suggesting the presence of an outsider. According to the neighbor, it was a black four-door car, and it didn't just show up once. It passed by twice that night. The first time, the car drove slowly through the neighborhood, as if the driver was studying each house. The second time, the car came back and the headlights were turned off before it reversed into the driveway of an abandoned house nearby. That wasn't someone casually looking for parking. It looked intentional, an attempt to hide. The neighbor also said that right after the car stopped, the driver got out. The figure was wearing dark clothing, a hood pulled up, and walked directly toward Tyrone's house. There was no hesitation, no interaction, just a direct path to the exact spot where, minutes later, the gunshots rang out. This moment became a crucial puzzle piece in the picture investigators were trying to assemble. If the witness account was accurate, then the shooter had not only been watching Tyrone, but had deliberately tried to conceal his vehicle. That pointed to a high level of planning and a clear motive, not a spontaneous act. Investigators immediately requested footage from traffic cameras in the area. Several cameras caught the black car leaving the neighborhood right after the shots were fired. Other cameras captured the license plate as the vehicle headed straight toward the state of Illinois. There was no clear shot of the driver's face, but the license plate alone was enough for the automatic plate recognition system to identify the owner. When the data was processed and confirmed, the name that showed up stunned the entire investigative team: Jeremy Quillar. And an even more critical detail, Jeremy served in the same military unit as Tyrone. That instantly shifted the entire direction of the investigation. Jeremy wasn't just an acquaintance, he was Tyrone's fellow soldier. That connection raised a series of new questions. Why was a fellow soldier near the crime scene? Did they have any conflict in their unit that the family didn't know about? What was Jeremy doing in Michigan? Did anyone know he left Illinois that night? As detectives dug deeper, they uncovered something even stranger. Jeremy had absolutely no family or legitimate reason to be anywhere near Tyrone's neighborhood. No history of visiting the area, no friends nearby. His presence at that exact time and place seemed far too coincidental to be random. When investigators checked the military database for Jeremy's schedule, they found he was officially supposed to be on base in Illinois. But a physical check revealed he had left several hours before the shooting, without permission and without notifying his commanding officer. That unauthorized absence violated military protocol and instantly made him a primary suspect. At this point, multiple pieces began to fall into place. The car matched the witness description. The license plate matched the traffic camera records. The direction of travel matched the route from the crime scene back to Illinois, and the owner of the car had a direct connection to the victim. Detectives no longer saw this as a random attack. The shooter clearly planned the ambush and had personal knowledge about Tyrone, specifically knowing the exact moment he would step outside. That strongly suggested someone on the inside might have been feeding information. One investigator wrote in an internal report, "If Jeremy really pulled the trigger, then he knew exactly when Tyrone would be outside. The question is, who told him?" This marked the moment the investigation completely shifted. No more theories about robbery or random retaliation. Now, police began digging into Tyrone's personal relationships and into the people closest to him. What they didn't know yet was that the clue about the black car was only the tip of the iceberg. Beneath it lay something far darker: betrayal, a premeditated murder plot, and a secret the victim never even saw coming. When investigators arrived in Illinois to question Jeremy Cuellar, he appeared unusually calm. He didn't deny driving the black four-door car on New Year's Eve, but the explanations he offered were vague and didn't match the traffic camera data. As the circumstantial evidence stacked up, Jeremy began to waver, and then, when pushed to give a clearer answer, he suddenly admitted something that turned the entire investigation in a new direction. Jeremy said that he and Kamaya, Tyrone's wife, had been involved in a secret romantic relationship while all three were stationed in South Korea. The investigators were stunned. Until that moment, they had never considered Kamaya a suspect. She had appeared devastated at the scene, insisting she had no idea what was happening. But now, a fellow soldier was revealing that there had been an intimate relationship behind the scenes. When pressed for details, Jeremy claimed the affair had gone on for a while and that Kamaya had confided she wasn't happy in her marriage to Tyrone. He didn't clearly state whether the relationship continued after they returned to the U.S., but the revelation alone dramatically reshaped how detectives viewed the possible motive. Investigators immediately zeroed in on one crucial point. If Kamaya and Jeremy were truly involved, it would explain how Jeremy knew the exact moment Tyrone walked out the door. That single detail could clarify why the shooter appeared at the perfect timing, almost to the second. It also explained why there were no signs of forced entry or long-term surveillance. The shooter could have been receiving information directly from someone inside the home. Police reviewed Kamaya's statements from the night of the shooting. Details that once seemed reasonable now felt questionable. Her extreme panic, her attempts to climb into the ambulance, her repeated insistence that she didn't know anything. All of it could be genuine grief, but it could also be exaggerated behavior meant to divert suspicion. The lead investigator wrote, "In many premeditated murder cases, motives stem from complicated romantic entanglements. When a third party is involved, the likelihood of the spouse being part of the conspiracy increases significantly." Within minutes of recording Jeremy's confession, the entire structure of the investigation shifted. The affair became the new focal point. It explained a potential motive and opened up a critical question. Was this a coordinated murder plot involving more than one person? The earlier theories, robbery, mistaken identity, random retaliation, faded quickly when compared to a far more human motive: jealousy, desire, and betrayal. What first appeared to be a senseless shooting now looked like something far more calculated. A planned execution where the person who pulled the trigger and the person behind the plan could be two entirely different people. After Jeremy revealed the affair, police immediately summoned Kamaya for another interview. This time, there were no comforting gestures and no assumption that she was simply the victim's wife. She sat in the interrogation room as someone who might be directly connected to the crime. During the first session, Kamaya maintained her grief-stricken demeanor and firmly denied any involvement. But when detectives played the recording of Jeremy's statement, her expression shifted. The confidence she had earlier began to fade. She grew restless, avoiding eye contact, and her answers became increasingly inconsistent. She denied the accusations several more times, but the more she denied, the more contradictions appeared until she eventually ran out of room to hide. By the third round of questioning, when investigators presented recovered text messages she thought she had successfully deleted, Kamaya fell silent for a long time, then lowered her head onto the table. And at that moment, she delivered a confession that shook the entire investigation. She admitted that she and Jeremy had planned Tyrone's murder. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment fight. It wasn't a sudden argument. It was a deliberate plot developed over weeks. How the plan was made, Kamaya stated that Jeremy was the first to bring up the idea, but she didn't reject it. In fact, she gradually became the one pushing the plan forward. Jeremy would track Tyrone and carry out the attack at the right moment. Kamaya provided all the information Jeremy needed: Tyrone's schedule, when he left the house, when he returned, and whether he was alone. She knew Tyrone's habits well, especially when he visited his father's home. She also knew he frequently went back and forth between the house and his truck to grab things. Giving Jeremy the exact moment he stepped outside was simply a matter of timing. Kamaya admitted, "I told Jeremy when he went out alone, so he could ambush him." This matched the crime scene and the neighbor's statement about seeing someone walk toward Tyrone's house moments before the shooting. It also explained why Jeremy appeared at the perfect time, a narrow window only Kamaya could predict. The real motives. When detectives pressed her for the reason behind the plan, Kamaya stayed silent for a long time. Eventually, she gave two motives, each more chilling than the last. 1. To escape a marriage she claimed she was no longer happy in. Kamaya said she felt trapped, that Tyrone controlled the finances and her future. Tyrone's family strongly denied these claims, and investigators noted that her explanations seemed vague and lacked substance. 2. To collect $400,000 in military life insurance. This was the motive that caught detectives' attention. As the legal spouse of a service member, Kamaya was the primary beneficiary if Tyrone died while still enlisted. The large payout, combined with the affair, created a dangerous incentive. When asked whether she thought about her son during the planning, Kamaya quietly replied, "I thought we could start a new life. With that money." How she pushed Jeremy toward murder. Kamaya described exactly how she manipulated Jeremy. She repeatedly told him Tyrone was in the way of their happiness. She played the victim, telling Jeremy she was emotionally hurt. She insisted that if Tyrone died, they could leave the military and move somewhere new. And most importantly, she mentioned the insurance money as a way to secure their future. Jeremy's earlier statement matched this. He believed that helping Kamaya get free from Tyrone would allow them to be together and benefit financially. Kamaya also admitted she encouraged Jeremy to watch Tyrone's father's house for days, studying Tyrone's routines. She said New Year's Eve was the perfect timing. Everyone would be indoors, and noise outside would be dismissed as fireworks or celebration. The final signal. According to Kamaya, the moment Tyrone returned from visiting relatives with food, she gave Jeremy the signal. Not through a text message, but through an agreed-upon action, turning on the garage light at the exact moment they had planned. That was the sign Jeremy had been waiting for. Minutes later, the gunshots rang out. Everything aligned. Everything made sense. And everything pointed to one bitter truth. The person who led Tyrone into the trap was the woman he trusted most. The trial of Kamaya Hassel and Jeremy Cuellar drew significant attention from the local community, especially because both of them were young soldiers, raised in a disciplined environment and rarely associated with serious crimes. The atmosphere in the courtroom was heavy and tense, as the details of the case involved betrayal, calculated planning, and a devastating end for a young husband and father. Kamaya Hassel. In court, Kamaya faced several serious charges. First-degree murder conspiracy to commit murder based on investigative evidence, statements, and recovered data. The jury concluded that Kamaya played the role of the mastermind. She was ultimately sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Throughout the trial, Kamaya maintained a calm and composed demeanor, showing no strong reaction to the verdict. However, this was reported only as an objective observation of her behavior in the courtroom, not as an interpretation of her internal emotions. Jeremy Cuellar. Jeremy Cuellar, the person who pulled the trigger, appeared before the court in a separate proceeding. He accepted a plea deal and pled guilty to second-degree murder. Although Jeremy made a statement in court, the content recorded in the official documents was procedural and did not include any detailed description of his emotions or personal attitude. Given the severity of his actions, the court sentenced him to 65 years in prison, ensuring he would not return to a normal life for the rest of his years. Case conclusion. The sentences were considered appropriate for the nature of the crime and brought closure to a lengthy investigation filled with shocking developments. Tyrone Hassel III, the victim, was remembered during the trial as a young soldier with a bright future, a dedicated father, and a source of pride for his family. The case may be closed, but its impact continues to leave a bitter impression. A marriage destroyed, a life taken, and two young people who will spend the rest of their lives behind bars. The case of Tyrone Hassel III is a powerful reminder that every choice we make comes with consequences. A once loving family was shattered in an instant because of deception, selfishness, and greed. In any relationship, and especially in marriage, honesty and communication are essential. When two people can no longer find common ground, separating in a respectful and civil way is always the better option. Resorting to violence or plotting harm will never lead to anything good. It only pushes everything toward tragedy. Money can also be a double-edged sword. When greed clouds judgment, a person can lose their humanity and destroy their own future. One reckless decision, made in a moment of weakness, can send a life down a dead-end path, costing freedom, dignity, and everything that once mattered. This case also shows that the law spares no one. No matter who you are or what position you hold, if you commit a crime, you will eventually face justice. And sadly, the harshest consequences don't fall only on the offenders. They fall on their families, their children, and innocent people who had nothing to do with the crime. The biggest lesson here is this: know when to stop before things spiral out of control. Choose communication over violence. Choose honesty over betrayal. And remember, no amount of money is worth the price of a human life.